Hey friends, today was the first day of book club. We started a book club. I've told you about the book, The Gift by Lewis Hyde, several times, but the whole reason that I came back to this book is because my wife suggested it as the first book we read. She started this, she and a former friend from high school from long ago decided at the reunion that they wanted to start a book club, and I immediately glommed onto that idea. I think I've actually been a closeted book club lover for most of my life. I've just never actually been in a book club. But I found out today that it's awesome. I love it. I'm all in. And it was really exciting to discuss this book, which at this point, if you haven't read it, I've talked to you about it a number of times. It's called The Gift by Lewis Hyde. It's all about the first part is sort of an examination of gift economies, how societies that essentially operated with gifts comprising a certain amount of their commerce happened in gifts rather than what he calls commodities. But then he takes that sort of economic model and uses elements of it or reflects elements of it through the prism of creative work, where he talks about the nature of creative work, of art, as having a gift component. Sometimes the whole thing is a gift, but even in a market economy, there's a gift component of art that is absolutely necessary and irreducible, or else it ceases to be art. And it's a very elegant and very nuanced examination, both on the kind of economic model, commerce side, and on the creative spirit art side. And I found myself, recognizing, I have, even in the last couple of days, as I've been thinking about, I've spoken about this, but we had a dear friend who passed, and I've been invited to share something at the memorial, and even just that provocation, that prompt, has brought me into contact with an aspect of my own self, the creative process within myself, in a way that it's almost hard to admit, but it's almost hard to admit that can go dormant, or that can become sidelined. But coming back into a kind of period of feeling like, okay, this is being asked of me, or I am opening a door in this area of my life. It's like being woken up, and it energizes me, and it reminds me or affirms my sense that is kind of the central practice of my life. I've been through, I think, a sort of evolution in terms of how I hold art and creative practice within my own self, within my own, both as a practice and just as a commitment. Because I think there was a period of my life when I assumed, rightly or wrongly, that I would just be magically sustained by my practice somehow. And maybe that was necessary for me to believe in order to make the commitment at the time. But then I have gone through a period of, in some ways, reevaluating those assumptions. It's not that I have, I'm still here. Here I am. I'm alive. I'm eating food every day. But the way in which my creative practice has sustained me has certainly sometimes surprised me on both sides, right? It's surprised me how well it has sustained me sometimes, and it has surprised me how it hasn't, in some ways, manifested exactly what I might have expected at a younger point, or at a less mature point in the process. And what comes out of it all for me is a sense of renewed commitment, a sense that I'm this commitment is more ironclad than ever the older I get. It's more, and I keep feeling more and more convinced that this is my path. And that's a nice way to feel. That is a nice way to feel, because the way in which I've been energized and the way in which I've felt just it's almost like a paradigm shift that happens, where when that inspiration, that sense of connection to, I mean, we'll call it the muses, that sense that inspiration has an open channel. I mean, there's just hardly anything that compares to that in terms of energizing me. The only thing that comes that is in the same category is the sense of connection that I get from meditation and or from practices like qigong or yoga that connect me with my whole being and my whole consciousness and everything. It becomes kind of one expression, one unified field. But in some ways, creative work and the commitment to creative work is part of that, because it feels like this is where that awareness, this is what it says out loud. This is where it speaks. This is what it has to say. And I think I've had a feeling recently that a commitment to art, a commitment to whether it's music or theater or writing or whatever your art is, or visual art, whatever the thing is, a commitment that's sober. In other words, it's not contingent on fantasies of future success or any kind of really egoic payoff, which of course in some ways means embracing the gift, embracing the art as the gift that it is. Doesn't mean we can't also try to sell our art, maybe also try to sustain ourselves with it, but it just means really, really knowing that the non-negotiable aspect of the art is this selfless commitment, and that it kind of has to be that it's like it opens a field. All of a sudden we can't lack. It's bizarre. It's like it's truly the feeling of like all of a sudden I can't lack for anything, because everything's a gift. Everything's a provocation. Everything is part of my education. Everything is part of my evolution. And it's a creative process that brings that in and makes it a task, makes it a concrete thing, gives me a working surface to focus on. And if I'm not immersed, if I'm not committed to that practice, or even just sort of like I'm doing it but I'm not fully committed to it, then I get disoriented. I become disoriented. And it's not healthy. It's not good. So, I haven't really talked much about book club. But book club was a sort of like survey of this book, and really looking at any number of different outgrowths and offshoots of what the thinking provokes. And I think, one thing that I pointed out towards the end of our time was that it's really fun to read a book that identifies a pattern at a certain point in history, which then that pattern becomes even more visible and usually pronounced over time. That's just it's just cool to read stuff like that, because you feel like, I get excited for the author who pointed this out in the 80s, and now it's 2024 and they're looking at the world now, and their pattern has held so true. The pattern that he's pointed out has held so true, and some of the diagnoses and some of the prescriptions are so valid. They've been affirmed and validated by history. It's fun to read books that like that. So anyway, that's where I am today, people. I appreciate you. Thank you for watching. You will hear more about Lewis Hyde because I have not finished the book yet. So stay tuned, and also read it yourself. Lewis Hyde's The Gift. It's amazing. Check it out. Much love. I'll see you soon.